It's a really lovely photograph. 4 young women dressed up to the nines in beautiful gowns. Their hair and their makeup perfectly done. It's obviously a very posh black tie affair, and from the looks of it, they're all delighted to be there. In the middle of them stands a man, also smiling broadly for the camera. He's not unattractive. He's wearing a black tuxedo suit with the matching bow tie, and his hair is neatly cut. There's nothing about him that screams sinister or dangerous. It's just a photograph of a big night out with a group of friends excitedly posing for the camera. They often say that a picture can tell 1,000 words, but what's extraordinary about this particular image is the horror that it's hiding. 2 of the girls are sisters. The other 2 are their friends, well, kind of. At events like these, they rarely left each other's sides. 2 things connect all the girls together: the man in the middle of them and their all-consuming passion for horses. The occasion is a hunt ball, a big, glitzy affair that sees these young women change out of their usual uniform of grubby jodhpurs and warm fleeces into stunning long dresses in striking colours. It's their time to shine, away from the stables, to literally let their hair down and enjoy being in the company of other horse lovers from across Ireland. And there's no one who loves the fun and the buzz of a hunt ball more than auburn-haired Katie Simpson. Friends describe her as mischievous and bold, but also very kind and considerate. In this photo, she's just 19 years old. She looks fabulous in a sequenced, full-length dress, cream-coloured with vertical silver stripes. Her gorgeous hair is long and wavy, parted in the middle, and it hangs down her back. Dozens of photographs are taken that night, and in most of them, Katie is with her crew, standing with her arms around one of the other 4 women, or the man who is at the centre of everything they do. Within 2 years, this beautiful, funny and talented young woman will be dead in the most horrific of circumstances. She will be betrayed by some of the women she thought of as her friends and closest confidants, and her killer will never be brought to justice. But her death should serve as a wake-up call to an industry that many believe is a toxic workplace for young girls who are preyed on by perverted men. Perhaps even more importantly, it revealed shocking shortcomings within the police service of Northern Ireland that still need to be addressed. This is the disturbing story of Katie Simpson and the man who was almost allowed to get away with her murder. The jolly-looking man at the centre of the photograph, surrounded by the women who fell under his spell. I'm Nicola Tallant, and this is Groomed, an investigative series from Crime World Presents. Episode 1, The Pied Piper of Tynan. By the time Johnny Creswell arrived to work at Darton Rees stables in the small village of Tynan in County Armagh, the 19-year-old was already an established horseman. He'd dropped out of school 4 or 5 years earlier to work full-time as a jockey near his home on the outskirts of Derry City. After starting out in showjumping, he switched to point-to-point racing in his later teens. High-speed racing over huge jumps suited his alpha male persona and his talents. He sat awkwardly in the saddle but could hold on to a horse for dear life, no matter how rough the ride got. Always intensely serious about his career, he needed an apprenticeship at a reputable yard to work his way up. The ultimate goal was to be a trainer with his own stables and a string of successful horses. But like most in the equestrian world, especially those without funds of their own, he had to start at the bottom. For an average-looking teenager with limited education and humble background, he had an extraordinary amount of confidence. This innate cockiness and swagger were usually the things most people noticed about him when they first met him. It either turned people off him, or it drew them to him like moths to the flame. When talented jockey Jill Robinson met him on the Northern Ireland horse circuit, Creswell was still only 15 or 16 years old. And despite being 6 years older, she was quickly smitten with the Derry teenager. Their unconventional relationship raised more than a few eyebrows, but they made no apologies for it. Jill has since spoken about how she never expected to fall for someone so young, but there was something about this rising horse star who was unbelievably cocky and had an amazing smile. She's told how he was her first real love, and it was all-consuming. However, not long into their relationship, Creswell began to cheat on her repeatedly. When she'd hear him on the phone to his long line of other girls, she admitted to feeling complete devastation and described it as being like someone ripping her heart out and crushing it like an Easter egg. The relationship was rocky and finally ended for good in 2008. Before they split, Jill was the one to tell Creswell about the opening at Darton Ree Stables in Armagh. It was a good outfit with some excellent horses in a hugely affluent part of the country. A perfect place for a jockey with ambition to start working their way up. In the meantime, a broken-hearted Jill went to Australia, presumably to put some distance between herself and Creswell. And that's where she was when Creswell met Abigail Lyle at a horse show in Belfast. At this stage, his star was firmly on the rise, while Abby was still working her way up, still at the mucking out stables part, at the bottom of the pecking order. She has told how she was smitten with Creswell from the very beginning. He was just so confident and charming and cocky and cheeky, but also very thoughtful, sweet and kind. Just an alluring person, she explained. Now a world-class showjumper who rode for Ireland at the 2024 Olympics in Paris, Abigail Lyle is based full-time in the UK. Her family remember vividly when she first met Creswell and brought him to meet them at their home. It would prove to be a turbulent time for all of them, and not just because of how Abby's relationship progressed. Her sister Rachel remembers being impressed by Creswell's charisma and good manners.
He was very, very charming, very kind of hypnotic, and he was a good-looking guy before he put on all the weight. Do you know, he was... The guy I was talking to this morning described him as preppy. He was really well turned out. But then he had a really minging car, do you know, what all those horsey ones do. Like, it's a big old Jeep thing that was wrecked, but he always looked very well turned out. So she would have met him in the October.
Do you remember her telling you she'd met somebody?
Yeah, and we were all like, you know, excited because he sounded lovely. She'd gone out with people before that who had been students, and she'd had one boyfriend who was really nice, who was really into cars, but then she'd gone out with a couple of ones who were real rockets, who just weren't good for her, and the relationships weren't good because they were, it's not that they were toxic, they just rubbed each other up the wrong way. So there was verbal altercations. There'd never been anything physical. And so she met him and we thought this was great. And he came to the house and he was lovely. And you know, we would have had this room that we all sat in that was called the Snuggle. And it was just our like wee room in the house where we watched TV. And he would have come in at the start and he was really smiley and very like he would have looked at you, really engaged you.
How did he get on with your father?
Very respectful and smiley. He just was an overall, seemed like a really nice guy. I'm not sure if Dad was there a lot because he would have been working a lot. So it probably would have been just, you know, Mum and Joe and me if I was down. But I remember him coming in and he was nice.
No red flags?
No, and I think I actually remember him coming to pick her up one Sunday and we'd probably had dinner and then he picked her up. He seemed to be nice because he was picking her up and doing things for her, you know, and taking her places. And then that was a feature, obviously, the driving around in the car, because that's where the first assault was, in the car.
Tanya Fowles is a well-respected and long-serving journalist who happens to live not too far from Tynan with her husband. She's covered the courts for decades and has heard some of the grimmest cases imaginable. She's at that stage of life, a bit like myself, where she really doesn't worry too much about what people think about her anymore. She's good company, which is helpful because we've spent a fair amount of time together over the last year or so. She loves her job, she loves animals, and she loves where she lives. We've driven through Tynan several times now, which never takes too long as the place is tiny. She's shown me where the Darton Ree Stables used to be, the place where Creswell first met the Simpson sisters. And we've travelled across Armagh to all the places that feature in this sorry tale. She's discreet about her exact connections to Tynan and the people who knew and loved Katie Simpson, but it's obvious she's had the inside track from almost the beginning. However, her interest in Katie's death did not come from a journalistic angle, not at first. It was because she knew, and other people close to Katie knew, that something wasn't right about the way in which she had been found. Ultimately, it's thanks to Tanya making a complete nuisance of herself that the real circumstances of Katie's murder were finally revealed. Not that she's ever looked for praise or thanks, and she certainly knows that the police service of Northern Ireland aren't going to apologise to her anytime soon. But her knowledge and tenacity can never be underestimated. Getting to the bottom of Katie Simpson's death became something of a crusade for Tanya. There's little she doesn't know about what happened or who the main players are, including Jonathan Creswell.
Jonathan Creswell was born in Derry. There's some debate over roughly where, but we know he was born in Derry and he was raised in Derry. His biological father lives in Donegal, so he was raised by his mum and two very devoted grandparents. He couldn't have wanted for anything. He was a very, there's obviously a gap between the next child and then Johnny, so he was going to be just adored. And it would appear that he had a flair for horses from a very early stage. And I don't think school was ever going to feature. And then we don't know very much in the run-up to that, but he arrives in the little village of Tynan to take up a jockey apprenticeship. And that's very common. And he had taken up this role in Dr. Fitzgillespie's stables, Dartonry. Got into the area well, very quickly. And there would be a very big social side of it. So Johnny was very accepted and just blended in. And out racing, point to point, various things like this, and doing okay. And it also would have worked for a couple of other trainers in the area. Rented a house in Culloden. Again, that was always known as the jockey house. So whoever owned it stabled their jockeys there. And he would have been very, very well known for working with the horses. That's the nutshell of what is Johnny Creswell.
Was he confident?
Overconfident. There was an arrogance there, though, in the sense that nobody would maybe get an awkward young horse and you would have had to, can't get that one calmed at all. Well, you work with it and you calm it and you work until it wants to do the things. Johnny had a different attitude. Johnny was quite aggressive, and the old, will you not throw me? That kind of routine. Maybe it works for some, maybe it doesn't work, but it's not a good way to work an animal. So in the long run, he's getting more confident. He was attending the local riding club, pony club events, very much making his mark. Clearly very, very charming, very charismatic, very winning. He could win over, and he was very associated to females. I don't know many males who ever came into the picture. He always was with females. There was never that. And the younger ones in particular, he liked the younger ones. He flattered them, and he flattered the older ones as well. But the younger ones, if Johnny spent 2 minutes talking to them, their night was made.
So that would explain really when you first became aware of him. He was this sort of, guy, sort of swashbuckling.
He certainly would have been very full of himself.
South Armagh is not a place I was familiar with before we started work on this podcast. Tynan is a small place, not too far from the border with Monaghan on the other side. There's a pretty Protestant church right in the centre called St. Vindic's, and the only shops are a pharmacy and a post office right beside each other. You can imagine how interconnected this community is. According to the last census, 71 people lived there. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other, and any newcomer is immediately noted. For 44 years, the local GP was Dr. Fitz Gillespie, who died in 2020. The elegant house where he ran his surgery from still stands, and right behind it were the Darton Ree stables, which he set up and bred champion horses from. A one-time chairman of the Tynan and Armagh Hunt and Point to Point, Dr. Gillespie was also a senior member of the Turf Club of Ireland, and in 2008 he was awarded an MBE for voluntary services to horse racing. Darton Ree stables were revered by those in the business. It was also much loved by the locals. Many of them worked there, especially horse-mad youngsters who were happy to muck out the yards for the chance to just get close to the animals. A legion of jockeys worked there down through the years, including Jill Robinson, a talented young female jockey and trainer in her own right.
Well, Jill Robinson, who later became a co-accused, she's originally from Omagh and seemed to have a long-standing fixation with Johnny. Now, I understand she likewise was a horse trainer and a breaker, or call it what you will, a talented rider in her own right. And I think she was riding for the Gillespies and then recommended Johnny, her long-term friend. And that, to my understanding, is how he ended up in Tynan.
And we subsequently learned they were partners.
We learned that at the trial, which I didn't know. It was always denied that they were in a relationship, but it then seems to be that it did come out. She was about 6-7 years older than him, and it had been way back, I presume in the Derry days, and they had been partners but split instead. This was beyond a friendship. This was a very intense loyalty to each other, particularly Jill to Johnny. I think the thing that always stuck in my head the most was the month before, or the month and a bit before Johnny was arrested. It was his birthday, and, Katie's dead. There's a lot of questions floating about her death. That was the August. And in the January, Jill put this post up of "Happy birthday to my torture of a best friend. Wouldn't change you for the world." And it was almost like a boyfriend-girlfriend comment. Maybe not, but it struck me as your best friend. But as time went on, then we learned that they were, he depended on Jill a lot. He would have always deferred to Jill, and Jill was his number one cheerleader. Mm-hmm. But I can remember two women who came forward. They're women now, but they were younger at the time, and they remembered Jill saying, "You're very lucky that Johnny took an interest there. You're very lucky. Do you know how lucky you are? Because there's a lot of girls would give their eye teeth for the attention you've got." So it was a strange relationship.
Jill Robinson isn't in the photo from the Hunt Ball. We think she was probably the one behind the camera. She's been described as the mother hen figure within Creswell's group of women, organising them and always around. Although split up for years, she showed unwavering loyalty to Creswell, no matter what suspicions people might have had about him. Even when he went to jail for 6 months for brutally assaulting Abigail Lyle, Jill was there waiting for him when he got out and helped throw a welcome home party. By no means was she the only one in thrall of him, but she was certainly by his side the longest. Jill gave an extensive interview to Sky Television for a documentary they produced about Katie's murder called Death of a Showjumper. She'd never spoken before, and her appearance was unexpected, especially for Katie's family and friends. In it, she tried to explain how the dynamic between Creswell and the women he pulled around him worked. "We had this unit, 5 women, 1 man, she told them. It was completely normal for the horsey industry. It's very male-dominated. We were all working together as a unit, Christina, Katie, Hayley, Rose and myself." According to Jill, Creswell had complete control over his unit. "If Johnny wanted you to do something, you were so used to rushing and doing it," she said. "You would have dropped everything just to run and do it. You felt this need to do things for him. He really praised you if you did something well. On the other hand, if there was a lapse in judgment with an animal, he could have equally made you feel like shit. Robinson told how she took everything he said as gospel. It was, I suppose, kind of cult-like, where everything he said was the be-all and end-all. It's an interesting way to describe this very weird setup. And maybe it does, in one way, shed some light on the whole sordid situation. Because history has taught us that when a cult member goes rogue, the leader can often explode with catastrophic results. You've been listening to Groomed, a Crime World Presents limited series, edited and presented by me, Nicola Tallant. Written by Jane Finnegan. Contributor and researcher, Tanya Fowles. The series producer is Ian Malini. Nasa Kumaski is assistant producer.